Hello, my name is Mitchell Roger. I'm going to be presenting the final paper report of memory power management for big data system via DFS. Topics that are going to be covered will be background, experiments, and conclusions. Background, software piece. Intel Power Management is the software for dynamic voltage frequency scaling that we use on memory. This is provided by Intel to each mobile manufacturer, in our case Supermicro, which create their own program that talk to the Intel Power Node Manager interface in order to communicate commands to the baseboard management controller. Next, we have the Spark, a memory mass-reduced software based on resilient distributed dataset. Spark is used for big data evaluation part, since this is one of the most high-level available and reliable firmware on the industry. The Spark memory section is composed of three main parts: storage and execution, which are two sections that belong to the category of Spark memory, and user memory, that is up to the developer to use on the program stack. These sections are going to be analyzed on this paper: the span memorization, execution, and storage. On one hand, storage can grow up to a certain point that is defined per configuration file. This space is used to save cache values and intermediate computation. On the other hand, execution memory can cross the boundary defined by storage, since this is a program execution memory. This behavior is required to guarantee progress of the task. At that point, blocks of storage memory are going to be evicted from memory and persist on secondary storage. The previous described behavior is the one that we are going to analyze and work with to reduce memory consumption and maintain same level of task performance. Alluxio is a multi-tier storage system which allows to use memory as a primary storage and recover information using RDD techniques. If some files cannot be retrieved from memory system, we look into Alluxio as an option to optimize the intermediate phase of the Spark job, where the data get persisted to a worker node for further execution of the following phase of the job running. After some experimenting, we noticed that Alluxio didn't work as expected for this task due to the overhead associated with the different layers of it. Next, background associated with benchmark and hardware. On the benchmark side, we have StressNG, which is a tool used to load a computer system which works with the memory system using page in or out policies, as well as random access to it. This benchmark helps to baseline the DFS experiment. We have as well HiBench, which is a big data micro benchmark suite composed of several well-known benchmarks such as word count, TerraSort, Bayesian classification, K-means, random forest, PageRAND, to cite some of them. We ran most of the benchmark and found that the most memory-intensive one was the Bayesian, which has several steps that merge intermediate results. On the hardware side, we were going to use DDR3 as the system for our experiment. It is composed of 8 DIMMs of 8 GB, which is give a total of 64 GB of RAM per host, with a total of 4 hosts. Max power of DDR3 is around 3 watts in active state. The memory system goes from 5 watts to 30 watts. 5 watts is when the system is in a standby. Next, experiment section. Figure below shows how the memory power varies with respect to the power policy applied. We use the StressNG benchmark for this experiment. We can see how different policies start at high power setting than the one set and slowly start decreasing until we reach the desired power. We conclude based on the previous observation that the process to benefit from the power management policy needs to be run for a period longer than T, where T being a minimum amount of time required to set the desired frequency. As well, we can see for the 11 watt policies, the system only reached 14 watts because of the minimum power that can be obtained in active state is 1.75 watts. If we remember, we have 8 DIMMs, therefore we can achieve only 14 watts at maximum of the reduction since 8 multiplied by 1.75 watts is 14 watts. On the next experiment, on the figure, we can see how each benchmark affects the memory power consumption. We start using HiBench for now on for our experiments. We can see that K-means and web search are the one that drives more power on the runs. In the previous experiment, we can see how the system power consumption is affected by the CPU power as well as the memory power consumption. Even though in the previous experiment K-means and PageRank were the ones that drive more power, we were scared of the Bayes benchmark. On figures below, we decide to run Bayes benchmark since this is in theory should be the most intensive algorithm due to the behavior of prediction based on facts of the past or data previously collected. We noticed on the running of the format that it was not using the caching layer or storage session as the Spark job, so we modified the client program in order to start enforcing that behavior. In that way, we were driving more users of the memory system. We can see how the system behaved for 14 watt police versus no police in positories on the previous figures. We see that the system is saving power but impacting performance at a rate of 3 times the normal execution. For that reason, we start working on the intermediate result phase where the results are persistent either on memory or persistent in storage. We look into Alucia, which is exposed into the following session. On the next experiment, we can see how Alucia file system behaves against HDFS file system running Bayes benchmark. So each configuration was run 3 times. The runtime on each configuration was no polish, 14 to 15 minutes in total, the execution time. Then on Hadoop 14 watts, it took 41 to 42 minutes, and Lucid in 14 watts took 43 to 45 minutes. We can see the power consumption on the figures. Next on this figure, we analyze the power consumptions of Hadoop versus Alucio. On the previous experiment, we see that Alucio uses a little less power than HDFS on average, but the runtime is bigger than HDFS. For that reason, we can see on this figure that HDFS reflects a more conservative power consumption than Alucio. Next experiment, we start varying the amount of RAM presented to the operating system as well as using more effective the Spark memory or each task. Basically, we have an input job of 250 GB in total, which composes 30 files of 7.4 GB. The secure memory plus the storage memory together are up to 4 GB of each task. We can see that Lucho is performing worse than HDFS. We analyzed that behavior and it was found that Lucho doesn't work nicely for the intermediate step of shuffling due to the overhead that it presents when data is saved in one node and retrieved from a different one. Also, we can see on the right figure that Lucio is consuming more power than the rest of the system due to the large runtime than the other ones. For that reason, we decided to exclude Lucio for the subsequent experiments and focus on the HFS and the vanilla system. Next, on the table below, we start comparing some of different run size presented to us and task execution memory spill, which means shrinking the storage space in memory assigned to the Spark task in order to force the Spark task to persist data on secondary storage, HD or solid state drive. When the system is lower in memory by half of the previous experiment, the secondary storage is used to overcome the amount of memory missing. From figures, we can see that the SSD is well received by the Spark execution time as well as the power consumption of the system. The RAM of 64 GB on OS with 64 GB on HFS and SSD as intermediate storage is the one that has the best performance in all aspects, due to its low runtime which induces low power consumption. But we see a slightly difference in comparison with 64 GB and OS and 32 GB HDFS, which indicate that power can be reduced without impacting performance with less memory presented to the system. On the table below, we continue exploring the previous area with more device configuration. We can clearly see on the figure that SSD usage is a key factor on the runtime, which also drives the power consumption down at lower level than full memory with bigger storage size. But the runtime performance is impacted in comparison with the full memory storage size. The previous behavior was expected due to overhead of flow of the data from memory to and from SSD. Based on the previous result, we focus on SSD behavior with different storage size for Spark memory. Table show different configurations. We can see on the figure that execution with 32 GB can be beneficial of the use of SSD due to it drive better runtime performance as well as lower power consumption due to the faster runtime that it provides. Next and final, we extend the configuration to different workload and memory size, which is presented below. We conclude our experiments with those two figures, where we can clearly see that power consumption can be driven down with a little of runtime performance impact, which in some workload can be minimal. Finally, we conclude our recent presentation. On this research, we investigate how to effectively control and lower the level of power consumption on big data systems through the use of dynamic voltage frequency scaling and solid-state drive. The former has been used as a secondary storage device that supplements the lack of memory storage for intensive workload. This shows that memory power consumption can be reduced with a minimal performance impact for certain workload that present high demand of storage on the short phase or the use of caching on the developer side. Thanks for watching. If you have any question about the presentation, please email me to mroger3@sau.edu. Thanks.